Selling perfume online is it's basically like trying to sell a song on mute.
Yeah, that is actually the perfect way to describe it.
Right, because like how do you convince someone to hit buy when their primary sense for evaluating the product is completely useless through a glass screen?
You really can't. Not in the traditional sense, anyway.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So, welcome to this custom deep dive. Today we are unpacking a really comprehensive 27-minute strategic playbook on exactly how to launch a direct-to-consumer or DTC perfume brand on Shopify. And the mission for you listening today is to reveal this wild intersection where, explosive viral internet marketing slams right into the brutal, heavily regulated reality of supply chain logistics.
It really is. It's just a massive study in contradictions.
Oh, absolutely.
Because on one side, you have this industry being completely reshaped by Gen Z and these highly visual social media trends. But then behind the scenes, that exact same industry is bound by like century-old chemical regulations.
And rigid international shipping laws.
Yeah. Exactly. And super tight financial margins. So connecting the dots between those two worlds, like the invisible feeling and the highly regulated liquid, that's where a viable business is actually built.
Well, let's tackle that song on mute problem first. Because if you are asking someone to spend, say, $85 on a liquid they've literally never smelled, you really have to understand who that buyer is and, where they're hanging out.
Right, and the playbook explicitly warns founders about this. If you go into this thinking you are targeting a generic female beauty buyer, you're going to burn through your entire marketing budget in like a matter of days.
Just completely waste it.
Yeah, because the data completely backs up that the generic beauty demographic just doesn't apply here anymore. The modern perfume buyer is overwhelmingly Gen Z.
Which is fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
And if we look at the numbers, Gen Z buys significantly more fragrance per capita than any previous generation did at their age. But the thing is, they aren't walking into department stores to get spritzed by sales reps, right?
No, they're discovering scents on TikTok.
Exactly. And we're talking about a massive economic engine here. In 2025 alone, TikTok Shop moved over $162 million in fragrance.
Wait, 162 million?
Yeah.
That number is just staggering. I mean, for a product that people are buying completely blind or, I guess, completely scentless?
It's wild. And uniquely for the DTC space, TikTok organic and paid content drives roughly a third of total revenue for these brands.
Mm-hmm.
It completely dwarfs the return on ad spend you typically see on like Meta or Google.
Oh, wow.
But, the real fundamental shift is in how these consumers actually view perfume in the first place. Because the older generational concept of finding a single signature scent to wear every day for the rest of your life, that's totally dead.
Right. The sources mention they want a fragrance wardrobe instead, like 3 to 8 bottles. But I have to push back on that concept a bit.
Okay, sure.
If you, the listener, already have, say, 8 bottles of perfume sitting on your dresser, why on earth would you buy a 9th? Like, how much perfume can one person realistically wear?
And that is the exact hurdle founders face every day. It requires a complete reframing of the pitch because you aren't competing for their entire scent loyalty, right?
Okay.
And you aren't trying to sell them a replacement for an empty bottle. You are selling them a highly specific wardrobe slot.
A wardrobe slot.
Yeah, so a consumer might have a safe perfume for the office and a heavier one for going out. But do they have a scent specifically formulated for, like, rainy reading days indoors?
Oh, I see.
Or do they have a
Well-
scent that captures the anxiety and excitement of a first date?
Mm-hmm.
You are selling the mood, the specific occasion, and the aesthetic of that 9th slot.
So you're basically selling context.
Exactly.
But that brings us right back to the invisible product problem. The buyer is scrolling TikTok. They're looking for a specific mood to fill that missing wardrobe slot. But how does a brand actually capture their credit card without handing them a physical tester strip?
Well, that is where we get into the mechanics of the marketing funnel. Because the secret weapon of DTC fragrance isn't some complex advertising algorithm. It's the discovery set.
The discovery set. The sources were incredibly emphatic about this. Like, it's not just a promotional gimmick.
Far from it. A lot of novice founders treat discovery sets as, an afterthought or a cheap giveaway. But the playbook makes it crystal clear that the discovery set is the entire top of the marketing funnel.
Right. It's usually, what, 3 to 5 small sample vials?
Yeah, exactly. The pricing of those vials, though that is a masterclass in consumer psychology,
Right.
the brand has to price it between $4 and $15.
Let's break down why that specific window matters so much. If you price it below $4, I assume the consumer looks at it and thinks, It's just cheap diluted body spray.
Precisely. Dipping below that $4 mark just destroys the luxury perception of the brand. But if you push the price above $15, the friction becomes way too high and conversion rates just plummet.
It's too much of a financial risk for a brand they've never smelled.
Right. So the founder has to hit that sweet spot, say $9, ideally offering free or very low-cost shipping, just to physically get the product into the customer's hands.
So the sample set is essentially the bait, because the actual conversion engine is the automated email flow that kicks in after the samples are delivered, right?
Yeah, the automated Clovio flow is where the real money is made. It's this highly specific sequence of emails.
How does the timing work on that?
So on day 7, after the sample package arrives, the brand hits the customer with an email offering a credit, usually the exact cost of the discovery set, toward the purchase of a full bottle.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, and then on day 14, the automation checks in again, maybe asking which of the 3 cents they like best, just keeping the engagement alive. By day 30, the system shows them social proof, usually reviews from other buyers who upgraded to full bottles.
And the results of that specific sequence are hard to argue with. The source notes that this system magically converts 25 to 40% of samplers into full bottle buyers within 60 days.
It's incredibly effective.
So if the discovery set is the movie trailer, that automated email flow is basically the physical box office that gets them to buy a ticket.
That's a great way to put it.
But to get them to buy that discovery set in the first place, your product pages, like the PDPs on your Shopify site, they have to do some very heavy lifting. They have to sell feelings.
They do, because you're bridging a massive sensory gap.
Yeah.
You cannot just rely on a list of ingredients.
Right. I actually want to pull a specific quote from the source here because it illustrates this translation perfectly.
Go for it.
The playbook says, bergamot, vetiver, cedarwood is just a chemistry list. Smells like sunlight on warm skin after a swim is what actually triggers the purchase. You are literally translating an olfactory chemical compound into a core memory.
Exactly. You're giving the consumer the emotional vocabulary to understand what the perfume will do for them.
Right.
You still include the chemical notes for the fragrance connoisseurs who want to know the base and top notes. But the emotional, situational language is the hook that stops the scroll on TikTok.
So let's say you've nailed the aesthetic, your TikToks are going viral, and people want that feeling of sunlight on warm skin. What is the founder actually putting in the bottle?
That's the big question.
Because the playbook warns that mixing up your business models from the start will severely dilute the brand identity, a founder really has to pick a single lane.
Yeah, the highest leverage decision a founder makes before launching is which of the 5 business paths they're going to take. First, you have the own brand model. Think of established indie brands like Fleur or DS and Durga.
This is where you're working directly with a fragrance house to create a completely unique juice, right?
Yes, and it carries the highest upfront cost. We're talking typically $15,000 to $60,000 just for the formulation and testing. And it takes the longest to launch.
But it has the biggest upside.
Definitely. It provides the strongest defensive moat. You own the specific scent profile, you own the narrative story, and your grace margins can eventually hit that coveted 70 to 80% mark.
But not every founder has 60 grand lying around to just invent a new scent. So what's the alternative?
The dupe or inspired by model. A great example highlighted in the text is Dossier. They manufacture incredibly close versions of expensive prestige designer fragrances, but they sell them for a fraction of the price.
And what's fascinating about Dossier is that they don't try to hide what they're doing. I mean, doesn't a dupe brand inherently feel a bit cheap to the consumer?
It used to, yeah. But consumer trust has really shifted. Dossier leans heavily into fair pricing and total ingredient transparency.
Right.
Instead of acting like they have some secret magical formula, their marketing essentially says, here are the exact same raw materials the designer brand uses, but without the massive markup. The transparency basically becomes the marketing strategy itself.
That makes total sense. What about the other path?
The third path is the decant or niche reseller model.
Sure.
This is where a business buys authentic, really expensive perfumes, manually puts them into much smaller vials, and sells those samples.
It's a lot easier to start.
It is. It's incredibly fast to launch because you aren't developing anything new. But you have a very low moat and lower margins because literally anyone with empty vials and a steady hand can do it.
Right. And then there's the path the expert playbook explicitly warns us against, the generic discount reseller.
Founders should avoid this at all costs.
Wow, really?
Yeah. This is the model where you attempt to sell a massive catalog of heavily discounted designer perfumes. The fatal flaw here is that you're entering a race to the bottom against established monolithic giants like Notino and Fragrance X.
Because they just have too much scale.
Exactly. Those companies buy at a massive international scale, they operate on razor-thin margins, and an indie Shopify store simply cannot compete with them on Google search rankings or bulk pricing.
Which really highlights why extreme focus is the only way to survive. The smartest brands pick one specific lane and totally dominate the messaging. Like Sniff, who built their entire business model around a try before you buy concept. They send you the full bottle and a sample. You try the sample, and if you don't like it, you just send the sealed full bottle back. It completely removes the purchase risks.
It's brilliant.
Or Dead Cool, who took one super clean, gender-neutral aesthetic and stretched it across both personal perfume and laundry detergent. They aren't just selling a scent, they're selling a cohesive lifestyle aesthetic.
And that level of extreme focus is what provides the momentum to survive the next phase of the business. Because once a founder has dialed in the emotional product pages and chosen their business model, they crash headfirst into the logistics.
Oh man, this is where the illusion breaks a bit. It is so tempting to picture a founder sitting in a sunlit studio, mixing sunlight and warm skin dupes. But the reality is much darker. Perfume, as it turns out, is literally classified as a dangerous good.
It is a hazardous material. Because perfume is primarily composed of high-proof alcohol, it is classified internationally by transportation authorities as UN 1170 ethanol solutions. It is a Class 3 flammable liquid.
UN 1170. Just the classification name sounds like something out of an industrial safety manual.
I know, right? And that classification changes every single operational decision you make. For example, the playbook details the silent killer of Perfume DTC, a misconfigured Shopify shipping rate.
I was actually alarmed on behalf of the listener when I read this part. The text implies that if a founder just leaves a default shipping box checked on their website, they aren't just losing a bit of margin, they are accidentally committing a federal aviation violation. Like, how does that happen?
It happens way easier than you'd think. If a founder leaves standard Shopify shipping settings on, a customer might pay for overnight air or international shipping for a full 50-milliliter bottle of perfume. If the founder puts that box on an airplane without the proper, highly specialized hazmat certifications, specialized packaging, and chemical declarations, they are literally breaking international aviation laws. You are putting an undeclared flammable liquid into a pressurized cargo hold.
So overnight shipping is just completely off the table for a new brand.
Completely off the table. Indie brands are restricted to ground-only shipping within the contiguous U.S. and Canada. And you can't just drop these boxes off at a regular post office either.
Really?
Yeah, nor can you use standard third-party logistics companies, what the industry calls 3PLs. Standard 3PLs will not touch flammable liquids. You are forced to use specialty, hazmat-certified 3PLs like ShipBob's hazmat program to handle your fulfillment.
And the regulatory red tape doesn't even stop at the shipping box. There is a massive regulatory baseline just to legally sell the liquid itself.
Oh, the chemical compliance is rigorous. A brand must comply with the IFRA standards, that's the International Fragrance Association. Specifically, the source mentions the 51st Amendment, which is a continuously updated scientific baseline dictating exactly which fragrance materials are safe for human skin and in what exact quantities. Your perfumer has to provide a formal certificate of conformity.
And then the government steps in.
Yeah. In the U.S., perfume is regulated by the FDA as a cosmetic. Under the new Mulgore regulations, the Modernization of Cosmetics Regulation Act brands face incredibly strict requirements. You must register your facility, list every single allergen, and include specific flammability warnings on your physical packaging.
So if a founder ignores Mulgore or skips the IFRA certification to save money, what actually happens?
Your products get seized at customs.
Oh.
Retailers will categorically reject your brand, and payment processors like Stripe will shut down your account when the compliance flags hit. It is an unglamorous moat. But if a founder can survive the paperwork and the shipping restrictions, they lock out a massive amount of less disciplined competition.
Which brings us to the actual math of the business. Because of these massive logistical hurdles, the ground-only shipping, the specialty UN-marked cardboard boxes, the compliance certificates, the unit economics of selling perfume are shockingly tight.
Very tight.
The playbook insists a brand absolutely must have a 70% or higher gross margin just to survive.
A 70% margin sounds incredibly high for a physical product, but it really is the bare minimum in fragrance.
Let's trace a single $85 bottle of perfume and break the math down step by step. Where is that $85 actually going?
Okay, first, you calculate your landed costs. This includes the actual juice inside, the custom glass bottle, the European spray pump, the cap, the physical labor to assemble it, and the inbound freight to get it to your warehouse.
Okay, and what does that run?
For an $85 retail bottle, those landed costs are going to run between $14.50 and $29.50.
So on paper, the founder has roughly $60 in gross profit. That's the 70% margin. It sounds like they are printing money.
It sounds fantastic until the logistics reality hits. Because next comes the hazmat tax.
Ah, right?
Because you are forced to use specialty ground freight and hazmat-certified warehouses, shipping that single bottle costs the brand $8 to $14 per order.
Ouch. And we can't forget about the marketing engine we discussed earlier. Those cheap discovery sets weren't actually cheap to produce.
Exactly the opposite. The brand often takes a loss on those $9 discovery sets just to acquire the customer. So you have to amortize or spread out the cost of all those sample sets across the full bottles you actually manage to sell.
That makes sense.
Once you subtract the $14 hazmat shipping, the credit card processing fees, and the amortized sampling costs, your actual contribution margin on that $85 bottle shrinks drastically. You are left with somewhere between $30 and $50 of actual cash.
And that $30 to $50 is the only money the founder has left to pay for the TikTok creators, run the business, and maybe, eventually, pay themselves.
Which perfectly explains what the playbook calls the cash flow J-curve. Let's walk through a standard $20,000 launch for an indie brand. The founder is going to burn cash and operate in the red for about 7 agonizing months.
Wait, 7 months of losing money? Why does it take so long to turn a profit?
Think about the timeline we've built. You have to pay the fragrance house and the glass manufacturer up front. Then you pay the TikTok creators to make the content.
Right.
Then you send out hundreds of discovery sets, often taking a loss on the shipping. And you have to wait up to 60 days for that automated Klaviyo email flow to convince the sampler to buy a full bottle.
That's a long delay.
It is. It takes 7 months for the customer reviews to compound, for the algorithm to trust you, and for those sample-to-bottle conversions to finally tip the bank account into profitability.
And right when the founder thinks they've survived the gauntlet, right when a TikTok video goes viral and they are finally printing that $50 contribution margin, they hit what the source calls the reorder trap.
Oh, the reorder trap. It kills more young, successful brands than failure ever did.
Because the lead times in this industry are brutal.
Right. Custom glass bottles and IFRA-certified juices take 8 to 14 weeks to arrive from overseas.
Over 2 months. So if a founder waits until they're down to their last 100 bottles to place a reorder, they will go completely out of stock for 2 months.
Exactly. And stocking out of your hero scent during a sudden viral spike will kill the brand's momentum faster than ordering too much inventory ever could.
It sounds like a terrifying balancing act of cash flow and supply chain foresight. You basically have to order your next batch before you've even paid off your first batch.
You do.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, if a founder survives the hazmat rolls, figures out the TikTok algorithms, and manages that grueling 7-month cash flow J-curve, what is the ultimate payoff for all this pain?
The end game.
Yeah.
The transition from being a pure DTC internet brand into sitting on the shelves of physical retail stores and eventually a massive acquisition.
Taking a brand from a Shopify store to the shelves of Sephora is the dream for most founders, but it comes with a massive margin shock, right?
Oh, absolutely. If a founder thought hazmat shipping was expensive, retail takes it to a whole other level. Sephora generally takes 55 to 65% of the retail price.
Wait, if DTC is so profitable once it's up and running, why would a founder voluntarily go to Sephora and take a 65% haircut on every bottle?
Because retail is essentially a marketing expense disguised as a sales channel. Sephora provides premium shelf space, dedicated beauty advisors, and physical foot traffic.
Okay, I see.
But that 65% cut doesn't even cover everything. The brand also has to provide the physical tester bottles for free and pay co-op marketing fees just to be featured in Sephora's emails. Your margin gets squeezed to the absolute limit.
Which perfectly explains why a brand like Who is Elijah, which the playbook highlights, spent years relentlessly bootstrapping their way to multi-millions in DTC revenue before they ever took the hit to enter Sephora. You absolutely need the massive, profitable cash flow of your Shopify store to subsidize the prestige and the volume of being in a physical retailer.
You build leverage. And once you have that omni-channel presence, meaning you're highly profitable in DTC and highly visible in retail, you become a prime target for strategic buyers. Conglomerates like Puig, Estee Lauder, or LVMH are constantly hunting for fresh, modern voices to add to their portfolios.
The playbook actually mentions the conglomerate Puig buying the brand Byredo for a rumored 1 billion euros. That's billion with a B.
That is the absolute pinnacle of an exit. But for a standard, successful indie brand, a realistic exit multiplier is typically 2 to 4 times your annual recurring revenue, what the industry calls ARR.
And when does that usually happen?
This usually happens when a brand is doing between $3 and $10 million in ARR.
But the golden rule from the text, and this is crucial if you are thinking of building anything, not just perfume, is build for optionality, not for exit. I want to push on that. If the ultimate goal is a multi-million-dollar exit, shouldn't a founder do everything possible to pump up the numbers and look good on paper for a buyer?
Doing that is exactly how you destroy the value of the company.
Really?
Yeah, if a founder optimizes solely to sell, they start doing desperate things. They launch too many confusing product lines just to artificially pump up short-term revenue. They run constant discount sales, which destroys the luxury perception of the brand. Acquirers aren't stupid. They are buying brand equity and customer loyalty. If you have diluted your brand with endless discounts, there is nothing left worth buying. You have to run the business as if you are going to own it for the next 20 years.
The less desperate you are to sell it, the more valuable it becomes. Well, let's take a breath and recap this incredible journey for you listening.
It's been a lot.
It really has. We started with the sheer irony of selling an invisible product online using perfectly priced discovery sets and 30-day automated email flows to translate chemical compounds into emotional memories.
Right.
We navigated the terrifying world of UN 1170 hazmat shipping, Madhakar compliance, and ground-only freight. We broke down the math of holding the line on 70% margins just to survive a 7-month cash flow J-curve. And all of that to build a brand resilient enough to subsidize a move into Sephora.
It is an absolute gauntlet.
Right.
But the brands that understand the math and the psychology build incredibly defensible businesses.
It really makes you appreciate the invisible business mechanics behind the bottle on your dresser. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a provocative thought inspired by all this.
Let's hear it.
The source material made it very clear that generic targeting is dead. Success today is all about highly specific, occasion-based feelings, capturing the exact nostalgia of sunlight on warm skin or a rainy day in a library.
It is entirely about catering to highly personalized micro-moods.
Exactly. So think about this. As artificial intelligence gets better and better at perfectly predicting an individual consumer's micro moods and nostalgic triggers based on their digital footprint, how long until we see hyper-personalized fragrances?
Oh, wow.
Imagine a near future where a unique, one-of-a-kind scent profile is mixed on demand by an AI, instantly IFRA certified, and hazmat shipped to your door for an audience of exactly one.
An algorithm that knows what your happiest childhood memory smells like and bottles it before you even ask for it. It raises some fascinating questions about where the industry goes next.
Something to mull over the next time you spritz your favorite scent and wonder why you bought it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and we will catch you next time.